All right, welcome. Today we're going to jump into a pretty radical idea. It comes from Buddhist psychology, and it's all about who you think you are. We're going to look at the difference between that self your mind is constantly building day in and day out, and this deeper, kind of more stable being that might just be hiding right under the surface.
So let's just start with this. What if your self isn't really a thing at all? What if it's actually a habit? I mean, we all tend to think of our identity, right? Our personality, as this solid, continuous me. But what if that's not what's happening? What if it's just a process, something your mind does on autopilot again and again?
Well, that's pretty much exactly the view that Buddhist psychology takes. It says that our ego, our so-called self, it isn't fixed at all. It's more like this super fast, dynamic construction project. Moment by moment, something happens and bam, our mind just automatically puts together this temporary sense of me. Okay, so who cares, right? Why does this even matter? Well, because this constant unconscious rebuilding of the self is seen as a huge hidden source of our everyday stress, our anxiety. The old texts just call it suffering. Think of it like mental friction. It's the stress of having to create and then defend this me that really isn't even solid in the first place.
All right, so if the self is a construction, then what's it made of? What are the building blocks? Let's break it down and look at the 5 key parts your mind uses to piece together that feeling of you.
These building blocks are called the skandhas. And really, you can just think of them as 5 interconnected processes that fire off so fast that we mistake all that activity for one single stable self. They're like the ingredients in a recipe, not the finished cake. Okay, so here they are, the 5 ingredients. First, you've got consciousness. That's just the basic awareness that, hey, something is happening. Then perception jumps in to name it. Oh, that's an email from my boss. Instantly, a feeling tone pops up. And this isn't a big emotion, just a simple like, don't like, or meh. That little charge then triggers our volitional impulses, which are basically our habits, our automatic reactions. And all of this is happening in our body/form, creating actual physical sensations along the way. Now, this idea of feeling tone is super important. We got to get this distinction right. It's not a big, complex emotion like anger or jealousy. Think of it more like raw data. It's that split-second, pre-verbal or ooh that happens before your mind has even started to build a story around it. The big emotion, the story of being angry or joyful, that's what we construct on top of this initial raw feeling. Okay, so we've got the ingredients. Now, how does the machine actually put them together? Let's look at the engine of this moment-by-moment self-construction. It all happens through something with a big, fancy name, the perceptual cascade of dependent co-arising. Yeah, I know, it sounds complicated, but you can just think of it as a chain reaction, like a row of dominoes that gets tipped over every single time we experience something. And with each fall, it just reinforces that sense of me. Let's walk through it. Say it starts with contact. Your phone buzzes. Right away, that feeling tone we talked about shows up. Maybe a tiny knot of tension. That leads straight to craving. I gotta check that. Then comes the really key step, clinging. This is where you merge with the feeling. It's not just a feeling anymore, it's, I am so annoyed by this. And boom, in that last stage, becoming, a temporary annoyed self just got created. It's born right there in that moment. But look, if this whole spinning wheel of creating a self is what causes all this friction, then what's the alternative? Is there another way? Well, this brings us to something deeper, something much more stable, our being. There's a really great metaphor for this. Imagine a wheel. The reactive self, that's the I am this, I am annoyed, I am happy, that's the outer rim of the wheel, constantly spinning, constantly changing. But our innate being, that's the still, quiet hub at the very center. It's not reacting, it's just there. It's that basic background awareness of simply I am. A feeling of presence that's always there, totally separate from all the temporary stories the self is spinning. The 12th century master Chinwal had this beautiful way of describing it. He said its essence is stable and utterly peaceful, beyond all conceptual elaboration. which is just a poetic way of saying you can't think your way into this state. You can't figure it out with your mind. It's something that's already there, just buried under all the noise.
And what's really cool is that when we do manage to connect with this deeper sense of being, these amazing qualities just show up. You don't have to force them or fake them, they're just part of it. Qualities like equanimity, that's that feeling of spacious calm. And compassion, feeling connected to others, real warmth towards people, or loving kindness. And even sympathetic joy, which is just the simple ability to be genuinely happy when something good happens to someone else.
Now, this is maybe the most important point of all. This state of being, it's not some goal you have to achieve. It's not another item for your self-improvement to-do list. It's the ground floor. It's who you already are right now. It's just hidden, It's covered up by all that loud, clanking machinery of the reactive self.
So the big question is, how do we quiet down all that noise so we can actually experience this? That's where mindfulness comes into the picture. It's really just a tool, a way to shift your whole perspective, so you go from being caught inside the machine to just standing back and watching the machine work. Mindfulness, or sati as it's called in the tradition, is really just about one thing, being a witness. It's the skill of just noticing your thoughts, noticing those little feeling tones, noticing your body's sensations as they show up and then go away. And the key is to do it without automatically grabbing onto them and getting carried away. And this is where the magic happens. Here's how powerful that little shift is. Instead of going, I am angry, and fusing with that feeling, you create a tiny bit of space. You just shift to, oh, interesting, I'm noticing a feeling of anger arising in me right now. That little gap, that simple change in how you relate to the feeling, it changes absolutely everything. Because when you create that space, you don't actually have to stop the chain reaction. You just stop getting hooked by it. You can let the whole cascade of self-building happen, but you're watching it from the calm, stable hub of the wheel, not getting tossed around on the rim. And it's in that space, that stillness, that your natural, peaceful being can finally come through. So that leaves us with one last thing to think about. What if real freedom isn't about working harder and harder to fix or improve yourself? What if it's much simpler than that? What if it's just about learning to spot the difference between the self that you're always creating and the being that you already are?